DeRosa, and I am speaking with Dr. Sue Dyson, who lives in England and is an independent sports horse consultant. She was both the executive producer and a participant of the film Horses and the Science of Harmony. Dr. Dyson has been a lifetime rider, producing 3 horses to top national level, who subsequently competed at Olympics, European, and World Championships. She was an equine veterinarian for more than 40 years, specializing in lameness and poor performance. She has a passion and curiosity for understanding better the horse-tack rider interactions and the promotion of a long-lasting, harmonious relationship. Well, we're going to delve into horses and the science of harmony shortly, but first of all, I want you to share with our audience a little bit about you. That first time you got on a pony or a horse and how it brought you to where you are today.
Well, I'm not sure I remember the very first time, but I remember my very first pony, Poppet. Poppet was a wonderful first pony, but she was slow. And retrospectively, I realized she always had her ears back and was probably in chronic discomfort, but she was a fabulous first pony.
Wow. And then how did that bring you to do what you're doing today?
Well, I've had this lifelong passion for riding and had the experience of training some fantastic horses, some of which were more difficult than others, some of which I realized had some problems that you could work around by learning about them as individuals, because I believe that training horses is treating each horse as an individual. They each have a key. You have to understand how to unlock the key appropriately. And I've seen horses which have had discomfort, and that's a reason they can't perform. So you have to kind of figure it all out. And that's a long-term challenge. And you keep learning. And that's what's so exciting. You keep learning.
Don't we all keep learning? But that's what Horses and the Science of Harmony is all about. So explain a little bit about the name and a little bit about the film.
Well, we had the previous film, The 24 Behaviors of the Ridden Horse in Pain, and I wanted to be able to demonstrate that horses can work comfortably. You can have horses that are pain-free, and they are much more likely to be able to work in harmony with the rider. And that's surely what we want to achieve whenever we're riding a horse, that they are cooperating with us, they trust us, they have confidence in us. And we know as science develops that there are all sorts of reasons why and how we can develop harmony between horse and rider. And when that happens, it's a fantastic relationship because you feel as though you're kind of dancing with your partner, be it in the dressage arena or jumping. And that's what we're trying to achieve and show to the world that horses can be ridden without coercion and that horses benefit from being ridden. And that's exciting, I think.
I love that, that they actually do benefit. But, one of the things I really took away from this film was the senses. You talk about all the different senses. And that, to me, some of them were a real surprise. So can you focus on that a little bit?
Yes, I think most people have never realized that horses have hearing, which is in a different range to us. So, for example, they can hear very high frequency sounds, which we are not aware of. And for example, clippers emit very high frequency bands of sound. So it's perhaps not surprising that some horses are frightened of clippers. We don't understand why, because we can't hear that sound, which they can. And then their ability to see is very different to ours because their eyes are on the sides of their heads. They have a different color range, so they don't see red. They can't differentiate between red and green. Their ability to adapt to bright light and dark light is much slower than ours. And that's going to affect their vision going from a bright environment to a darker environment. And then their smell, they can smell very, very much more perceptively than we can. So if you put some medication in a feed, you might not be aware that it's got an odor, but the horse will tell it's got an odor and go nowhere near that bucket of food, despite the fact that they're hungry. So we need to understand this when we're dealing with horses. And then, of course, touch. Touch is super, super important because it's through touch that we apply the cues to ask the horse to do what we do, that we want them to do, and it's through touch that we can reward them, we can stroke them, and that is a reward. And in training, reward is really important.
That whole thing about touch really caught my attention because you see that in there when when you stroke their neck, when you touch them in any way. What is it that makes it so sensitive for them?
Well, their skin receptors are just so very, very much more perceptive. So, whereas we cannot feel necessarily a dandelion stamen landing on us, the horse does. And therefore, they are much more likely to react. And that's really important in kind of thinking about how strong a cue we applied. Because if we continuously apply cues that are too strong, it's going to kind of deaden the response by the horse. So we need to realize that they will respond to the very lightest of touches if they are appropriately applied and the horse is also rewarded when it does what you ask it to do.
You know, one of the things that relates to, to that is the fly. They can, a fly might fall on us and we feel it, but the horse really feels it. And that, really inspired me when I heard you say that part and when you talked about the color and such. And why do you think it is that they are so sensitive?
Why? Well, it must be an evolutionary process because they are prey animals. So they have to be really sensitive to outside stimuli because if they're not sensitive, then they are liable to become somebody's dinner. So they have evolved as a prey animal. And it's quite remarkable that we have this bond between us human beings and this prey animal, which is a quite unique relationship.
We really don't want them to become someone's dinner, and we want to share the love of the horse. And I think this movie really does that. What this woman went through, and I want you to share a little bit about that, who this is about, and what is it part of?
Well, in order to educate people, we felt we had to have a story. And our story is a true story about Bubby Upton, who's an up and coming 3-day event rider who in August of last year had an unfortunate fall at home. A horse reared over backwards on her, and she had a catastrophic injury of fracturing one of her lumbar vertebrae, which resulted in compression on the spinal cord and the nerves to her right leg. She underwent very major surgery and through grit and determination has made a phenomenal comeback. She was 10th at badminton this year and came to Maryland last weekend and was placed at Maryland as well. And then she got back and yesterday had surgery again to remove some of her implants so that she could have a more mobile back. So, I mean, her grit and determination, her attention to detail are just phenomenal. And what comes through in the film, I think, which dovetails so well with the story that we want to tell about science, is her innate attention to detail, her knowledge about how very small things make big differences to a horse's welfare and performance. And so it just fits so beautifully together. It's a wonderful story.
It is a wonderful story. And I have to tell you, in the first 10 minutes, when you start to tell about that story, I was in tears. And then to see what happened with her after that. Well, I want to thank you for chatting with me. Do you have any last words you'd like to say?
Now, I would just say, look and listen to your horses because they can tell us so much.
Well, thank you again. And I have to tell you, the one phrase that really stuck with me is when riding in harmony, it's like two become one. This is a film you do not want to miss. You need to watch it, and it is on the Equus Television Network. And I am Diana DeRosa, reporting for the Equus Television Network.